it works in our profession, we have a simple rule that was kind of instilled in us by the old city news service in Chicago. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Chicago or has heard of it. This is kind of the old timers, the guys with the fedoras, the crime reporters, the guys who would write the story like headless body found in topless bar. These are the guys who would do that. These are the real street reporters. And their saying was, if your mother says she loves you, check it out. You have to be brave. I've never asked my mother, mainly because in our business, if they tell you an answer you don't like, you still got to print it. So I don't follow that rule personally, but professionally I always do. And what we do as investigative reporters is we ask people questions. The first real investigation I ever wrote was about the chairman of the Board of Selectmen in a little town called Dunbarton, New Hampshire. This is a town of about 1,200 people. It's really not even enough of a town to be called a hamlet. And the reason why they have one paved road in Dunbarton is so that the guys on the Board of Selectmen can get paid to plow it. So this is a real little hooked up town. But the same way that we covered Kwame Kilpatrick, we covered Dunbarton, New Hampshire. The chairman of the Board of Selectmen was a guy named John Swindlehurst. And I was at a Board of Selectmen's meeting, and they were voting on heating oil contractors. In New Hampshire, a lot of the homes are heated by big tanks you have in your basement or on the side of your house where you just burn #2 heating oil to keep your place warm. And the town was voting on the heating oil contract, and I don't know why I happened to be at that meeting that night, but I was, and they voted on the contract, and they decided by a 2-to-1 vote to give the contract to Dunbarton Heating Oil. Well, this is a small town. There aren't a lot of jobs, there aren't a lot of people, there's not much of an economy to speak of, and they picked a local company, which to me at the time made sense. There's a 2-to-1 vote, and the guy who voted against was a guy named Rick Antonio, and he looked exactly like Abraham Lincoln if he hadn't been dead for 100 years. Maybe 90 years. Rick was not the best looking guy, but he was a good government official, a good public servant. He voted against the contract, and I was thinking to myself, why would he do that? Why would he vote against giving some business to a local person? And then I noticed Mr. Swindlehurst's shirt. On one side it said John, on the other side it said Dunbarton Heating Oil. And so that was the first investigation I ever did. And it would have been fine if he'd recused himself from the vote, first of all, and second of all, if he'd been the low bidder. Well, it turns out the low bidder was Loudon Heating Oil, and they should have got the contract, because what was in the best interest of the people of Dunbarton, New Hampshire was saving money and getting good service. And he forgot that. John Swindlehurst thought it was about self-service, not public service. That's the same problem on a much larger scale that Kwame Kilpatrick had. And we approached that story the same way. We asked, what are you supposed to be doing? What are you doing? And when we figure those two things out, we're going to tell people and see what they decide. What people in Detroit decide is that they didn't like it. And what the prosecutor decided is she really didn't like it. And she brought criminal charges. Now, I'm happy to talk about Kwame Kilpatrick. I can tell you 3 things off the top that may save you some questions, although I'm happy to take as many questions as you have, because first of all, I know enough about my business to know that I don't know everything that you want. And more, we're becoming an interactive medium where you tell us what you're interested in, and we try and go get it for you. Secondly, I think your questions are going to be just as educational for me as anything I have to say, because if I don't know what you guys are interested in, I can't go get those kind of stories. And third of all, some things, just the answers never change. So I'll tell you in order. I can't tell you who gave us the text messages. I was never threatened with physical harm. And I don't think that Kwame Kilpatrick killed Strawberry, the dancing stripper. See, if anybody here is familiar with how insurance works, there's actuarials. And they figure out, based on your profession, your lifestyle, your health, different conditions, how long you're expected to live. Now, I'm not an actuarial, but I can tell you that a stripper who's a prostitute and dates drug dealers generally doesn't live very long anywhere, and especially not in the city of Detroit. So I don't think the mayor killed Strawberry. And based on the way I saw him run the city, if he had tried to kill Strawberry, she would be alive and well today. Our job can be very complicated. There's something called the Freedom of Information Act. It's built on the premise that you, the people, are entitled to the records that your government creates, that keep track of what's being done, that explain why it's being done, that hopefully show that they're getting the best bargain, and that hopefully show that the jobs they're doing are worth doing and are done on time and on budget. In fact, we shouldn't even need the Freedom of Information Act, because we should just be able to go and say, where are those records? You don't even have to be a citizen. You just have to ask for them. But it's sort of like capitalism and markets. In theory, they're fantastic, but then we kind of mess them up because we get greedy, or because we want to help this business now for a little while, then help that business now, and everything sort of gets all messed up. Our business should be simple. We ask for records, we see what's in them, and then we tell you. But sometimes the people who are supposed to provide them are not quite as righteous as we'd like them to be, and so we have to sue for them. And we have to find out that when they say they don't have something, they really do. And when they tell us that the reason they did it is this, we find out from other people that it's really that. And our job gets really complicated, and it gets really frustrating sometimes. But the reason we keep doing it is because we think that you guys are entitled to the answers, and because it almost becomes like a sport. They're trying to hide the ball, we're trying to find it. And whoever gets to keep it wins. It's interesting when you look at government, because politicians and elected officials always tell us what they're going to do. You know, you don't really need me to tell you what somebody who's running for office, what their best qualities are. They will tell you that. And if they have enough money, they'll tell you that for 30 seconds in the middle of every one of your favorite shows. And they'll stuff something in your mailbox. And you may end up seeing them online. And if you're lucky, you'll bump into them on the street, because hopefully they still feel that they need to press the flesh and at least have some interaction with you. What you need us for is to tell you their worst qualities. Not because we're the kind of guys who like to pick on people. We're not bullies. But we believe there's two sides to every story. They're going to tell you everything about themselves that they think is great. And you need somebody to at least check and see if it's true.